sitting, standing?
I would stand if that was first.
Good evening. My name is Erica Weaver. I am running for the Democratic nomination for the 15th District. I am a mom of 3 amazing young people. I make sure that I say that because that is the thing that I'm most proud of. So when you meet them, you can thank me for contributing to this society. I am a public defender in Coles County. I am a member of the Mattoon School Board. I was elected to the school board in 2017. I love working on my school board. I do great work with my school board members, and I love serving my community. I am running because I did not think that or believe that there was anyone that would represent my best interest or the best interest of this district. I believe that I am the best person for this nomination. I still believe that wholeheartedly. I want us to get federal funds for education and for healthcare and for economic development. So I have a lot of really great ideas that I think would be beneficial. I invite you to look at my website and my Facebook page because I post a lot of things there, but you can find out more about me that you won't find out in 2 minutes. But maybe some of those things will be available through the questions that we have tonight. So I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Craig Morton. I'm from Salem, Illinois, right down the road here, born and raised. Went to University of Illinois undergrad and received my Doctor of Pharmacy from the University of Illinois in Chicago. Worked in Chicago for a few years at Mount Sinai Hospital, eventually becoming Director of Pharmacy there at a Level 1 Trauma Center at Mount Sinai. Moved back to Salem, raised my 3 boys, wife of 20 years, and ended up buying the pharmacy, but moved back to Salem about 12 years ago and purchased a family business about 6 years ago. It's an independent pharmacy in Salem, the medicine shop there. Serving my 2nd term on city council in Salem, so I have a little bit of experience there, winning elections. Jumped in the race because I've been watching our 15th district and our rural communities. The word I use is, it feels like being slashed by 1,000 cuts, just smaller and smaller and smaller. I believe the federal government is facilitating, helping these corporations just suck the life out of our communities. And I'm just afraid we're gonna be grocery store desert, pharmacy desert, radio station, newspaper deserts. And it scares me, our way of living is gonna be extinct, you know, my kids or grandkids. Second of all, I did my 30-second thing. Second of all, obviously I'm big on healthcare. What we are doing right now is completely unsustainable. We need to work on prescription drug pricing. Obviously it's a buzzword. And also I believe we need to work on the Affordable Care Act and make it better. 1-year, 2-year plans, quit griping about it and fix what is fixable and get rid of what everybody hates. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's G or H.
That's right.
We're the teachers. Sorry.
I know, that's okay. I don't mind looking like a dumb guy sometimes. So, my name is John Hersey, and I'm doing something a little bit different. Most of you guys, I've probably called to see a lot of people from other counties and other places here, and I've actually called a lot of people in this county. So, a couple people on here have hit you up for $20 or $25. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. A lot of you guys have heard about me though through some of the things I said. You know, I was the guy that went viral all over the country because I said, hey, I don't have a chance of hell in this kind of environment, in this kind of gerrymandered district. A guy like me coming from one side of the state, driving 2.5 hours to talk to people over here, like we got something in common. And right away, I got a lot of people in the DNC saying, welcome aboard. Don't say that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, a week later, I got a call from some campaign dudes who were sitting in the bathroom one day on their phone and saw my article in Politico and said, we gotta help this guy out and we'll do it at half price. And so then I came out straight about why I was running. And I said that I came out when John Shimkus was still in. In fact, I announced the day after he put $1.1 million in his campaign account. And I said I was going straight for him. The first guy in 20 years to say, I'm not running on an issue, I'm running against this guy. because I couldn't abide his involvement in that 2006 scandal when he ran the congressional pages and farmed out kids to deviant congresspeople. And I straight out called him a pimp. And the DNC said, you can't do that. You can't say that. And lo and behold, a month later, he decided he didn't want to run anymore. And so I'm still here. And I'm the guy that, even though I'm not running against Donald Trump, I said, I'm not worried about his policy so much as I'm worried that he's a rapist and a racist. And once again, the DNC said, you can't say that. And yet I got a Democratic county who's just made me a brand new free commercial with that line saying, that's what we like the most about you. So I've been poor my whole life. And that's why I think you guys can relate to what I'm doing. Thank you so much.
My name is Kevin Gaither. I know most of the people in this room, and it's so glad to be back. And I'm pleased to be back. I've actually been on the, here at Charlie Brown before in the 2018 election. A little bit about what I'm about, right? I'm a ground up candidate. I'm not a moderate candidate. I'm not a progressive candidate. I'm not an establishment candidate. I'm somebody that comes out to the community, listens to what people tell me, and then I act upon it. I did that down in Rosa Claire when the public library, the librarian told me about a leaking roof and the fact that they were going to have to close their doors. And I knew this was the only place for children to go after school. They are very hungry. This is such a poor community, and that's the story of so many people in the 15th district, because there have been so many missed opportunities. Now, I got on the phone with Comptroller Mendoza's office, and within a week they had a check. Now, that was in the last primary. Now, when I was down there for the Flora Spar parade and festival this year, people came up to me and thanked me for what the public library thing had nothing to do with it. I just called the right people and connected the dots. They came to me with another project, was to find missing artifacts from the Flora Spar museum that had burnt down decades before. Now, how in the world are we going to find this in the Springfield mess, right? Well, this week, thankfully, our campaign had connected all those dots and found the right people in state government, and we found those artifacts, and they're going to make their way from Springfield back down to Rosa Claire. That's what our campaign is about, is listening and then doing something about it. That's why we rolled out this week at Rossville, the town council, our small town, our historic building and small business working group. And I can't wait to answer your questions today. Thank you so much, Kevin Gaither. I want to be your next representative. Thank you.
Ready? Okay. CNBC reports, despite an overall economy doing well, 3 areas appear to be in decline: agriculture, energy, and manufacturing. Do you agree, and how do you feel Southern Illinois is impacted? And what solutions would you propose? Is that all that? You want me to repeat it?
Agriculture.
You should be the moderator.
No, I'm just bossy.
Yes, you are. I love you, but you are.
Who wrote these? This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, Erica, you want to go first?
So I do agree that our factories, our agriculture, and there was one more. Energy, yes. So, yes, I agree. I think about in Coles County, LSC Communications is closing in March. I worked at LSC while I was studying for the bar exam. I was talking to this gentleman over here about the environments there and the people that you meet and what's happening, and a lot of times those people are not trained to take on any other job. And so we have to funnel in some resources, and I know when we talk about internet access, our governor just signed into legislature a $430+ million agreement, invest into broadband. which gives people in rural communities and other communities the opportunity to have internet access. And I would like for us to have companies that are coming in and will give opportunities for remote jobs, because that's what we need. We're not gonna get a lot of companies that are gonna move in, but we can get them to give access to income remotely. In terms of energy, I want to invest into municipalities so they can invest into clean energy, and that also gives opportunities for employment. And so that is what I believe. I don't know necessarily what we're gonna do with our farmers. I know that farmers are having a really hard time. Family farms are closing, but I'm interested in meeting with the Farmers Bureau. I've talked to some of my friends and my colleagues who are farmers, and we are trying to come up with ways to help our family farms stay alive. And so that would be my position, is to get more federal dollars, but we also need to be creative in what we do for people who are trying to keep their families together and their businesses going.
Jason, you start the clock yet? Or you wait till I talk?
I'm waiting on you.
Okay, I'm ready. I agree totally. All three areas are in decline. We keep hearing on TV, low unemployment, but, we see it in city government in Salem and as a small business owner. The jobs that are there, they keep us on that lower tier or just above poverty, or just enough to keep us happy. Solutions, we need infrastructure, and any infrastructure bill, they need to remember the 15th district. That includes the broadband internet. I've had several people come in, it's like they have to drive into Salem, if you can believe that, to work at their parents' house for the jobs they have, just for the internet. The roads need to be upgraded, not just for the manufacturing, but for the farmers also. Getting to the farmers, I'm talking to several of them, they feel like they're just working for the big corporations. I was like, wow, you sound just like an independent pharmacist. I'm just working for the insurance companies and the drug companies. The answer there is we need to be nice in our trade deals. I think we've lost a lot of trust with the whole world, and we need to start working on that. Business and trade is built on trust, and we are flushing that one down the toilet, and that needs to be corrected, especially for the 15th district. Manufacturing is the same way as what I said. We need to make sure our trade schools, our junior colleges, and support our unions in this area. The junior colleges, the trade schools are very big economic drivers in our communities. Thank you.
So yeah, I keep on hearing about how great the economy's doing, and I'm just wondering, with all this 3% GDP growth, where's all the music programs and the after-school programs and the paid medical leave, paid maternity leave, and all the other stuff that's supposed to come with this good economy? Because I'm still asking my administration at my school for bus passes for my drama club after school, and we're told we don't have that money. So yeah, the economy can't be doing that great, and if it is, what's the point of having a great economy if it's not benefiting the people that need it the most? Now, I'll try to, in a short amount of time, I'll just try to throw out a word of Green New Deal is something that accomplishes all three of those things, and that's why that exists, because that intersectionality. But even if you are scared off, even if you're not a progressive like me and you're in that moderate camp and you're scared off by terms like Green New Deal, what it does is it's a labor-based solutions for our environmental problems. And that's especially true in this district. I just drove through Clinton County, the largest county in the state for hog farming. Now, most of us know that hog farming produces tons of methane. And that's dangerous. That's bad for the planet, right? I know I'm not a science teacher, but we all get that, right? So you would think that'd be a problem, except for hog farmers are equally worried about this problem, because it turns out warmer climates mean less meat on pigs. And one of the reasons why Clinton County and Illinois hog farmers do so well is because we have a climate that's ideally suited for their product. So one thing the government can do is invest in infrastructure and small businesses, subsidizing new technologies that help reduce, sequester, or get rid of those emissions. And that way we can have also a great economy, competitive business, while also healing the planet. And we can do all these things at once. It turns out that actually doing the right thing is also the right thing. Like, who would have thought, right? So we can do that. Those are things that we can do, but the thing that we have to do most is stand up and say, look, No, these aren't far out crazy solutions. We need people to say, look, I need more people who are less crazy than me to start repeating what I'm saying. Thanks.
So GSA, right here, the grain dryer manufacturing place closed down, and now in Paris, over in Edgar County, they're asking for tax breaks to expand their plant to put the grain dryer place up there. You know, LSE, I'm so glad Erica mentioned that. I actually researched what the company did with their tax breaks. So they gave $55 million of those tax breaks to their stockholders back in 2018. A year later, the stock was worthless, and they laid off hundreds of workers, 766 in Coles County. That's devastating. What we need to do is hold those companies responsible, instead of just watching all of our hardworking American citizens getting laid off and the taxpayers getting left with the bill. I suppose with ag, the sector, yes, it's hurting. Thanks to President Trump and his disastrous trade policies. We don't win when Trump is tweeting, that's for sure. What we need to do is diversify our crops, and we do that by literally investing in things like industrial hemp. I know John Spencer has been talking about this a great deal. I talked about this a great deal back in 2017 and 2018 during that race. And we did that by increasing investments. We did that with tax breaks and tax credits. Also using our things like the U of I Extension Office. They are actually doing industrial hemp through that. Energy sector, you know, we need to allow individual investors in the solar market to be able to easily put that money into, put their investments into the solar market, right, and into the energy system through an updated power grid. If you go into the southeastern part of the district, the power grid is not upgraded enough to be able to handle that capacity. We need to invest in that in order to expand our energy. So there's a lot of issues here. Thank you.
Okay, question number 2. Aside from Donald Trump, what, in your opinion, is the greatest threat to our democracy that exists today, and what can be done about it? Go, Erica.
I think it's interesting. Beyond Donald Trump, I think the biggest issue is that in our politics, in our democracy, we have lost diplomacy. And that's on both sides. That's even in this race. I don't want to be known for saying graphic and unpleasant and disrespectful things. That's what Donald Trump does. That's what this administration does. And that's what's happened in politics over the past few years. We've seen a rise in vitriol. We've seen a rise in a loss of civility. So for me, I think it's important that we operate in a space of dignity and transparency, and that we do the job. That's what it calls for. That's what people deserve. They deserve leaders and advocates who are serious about the job and who are diligent in their work and have work ethic and are ethical. And that starts now. It actually started 5 years ago. So you should have been an ethical person before you got here. And then you keep going and you're ethical going forward. And I think that's important because I'm doing this for our young people, right? Like, it's for us too, but for our young people. And I want my children to be proud. I want the students in my school district to be proud. I want your children and grandchildren to be proud. And I don't think they would be proud of what they see now. So that's what I think the biggest problem is. And of course, I know we have financial things and there's the debt, and I know we're gonna talk about all of that. But when we finish fixing all of those things, it doesn't matter if we don't represent people well. Thank you. I didn't know, but that's okay.
What happened?
I just know if we always want to go in that order.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Too late.
It's okay.
Too late.
There's
We'll
always
skip it up if we want.
What's the matter?
Pick order, we'll just go in this order, like, we're just going.
Yeah, it
Well,
doesn't seem.
I went by last name, so it doesn't freaking you out or anything.
No. I just didn't know if that was fair to everybody.
It doesn't seem fair.
to make Erica go first every time.
And then Kevin gets to run off all my points all the time.
I'm okay, I'm a big girl either way, but this is Craig's time, so go Craig.
Use your pocket.
I did not start the clock.
Okay.
Okay, what was the question? Right.
Biggest threat.
Biggest threat.
And
I
what are
knew
you
that.
gonna
I
do
knew
about
that.
it?
Okay. There are multiple threats or crises that are on a daily basis. I mean, we're hearing daily that we talk about, you know, student loan crisis. I call it the refugee crisis or the immigrant crisis at the border. Healthcare crisis, obviously, and the deficit crisis, and there's probably 4 or 5 more. But in my opinion, the biggest one that we need to start accepting and actually taking a hold of is the climate crisis. I mean, it is truly going to be and is a national security issue. We got to start working on it and accept it and not keeping our heads in the sand. I was like, this is truly something that is coming. One point that I say is that every infrastructure, any infrastructure spending has to have, or should, or will, or need to have some kind of climate initiative attached to it, whether it's a road or a building or whatever. We need to upgrade our existing buildings and businesses. It's truly expensive, but we need to start working on that. And that'd be easy. I mean, they're already there, technology's there, we need to start working on it. On the flip side of that is, like I said, with the farmers they need to start diversifying, and I really do believe that hemp. I've already been at some pharmacy conferences and some chemistry conferences, and this is really coming. I was like, I hope in the next 10 years our signs are gonna be made out of hemp. They are saying everything is gonna be made out of hemp, and Kentucky is already 5 years ahead of us, probably 8 years. Thank you.
So the first thing to say is that, like, you know, I think one of the big problems a lot of politicians are out of touch, because we want to talk about, like, problems, deficit, or the environment, or like education or whatever, and I'm like, what about getting old and sick and dying? Like, what about that? Like, isn't that a big problem that we all got, that everyone's worried about? So, like, oh, we fixed the deficit. Oh, am I still gonna get sick and old and die? So, yeah. So when you talk about what's the big problems, I think that a lot of politicians are talking about problems that real people don't relate to in a real way. And one big example of that is Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump's the problem. I think he's a symptom of the disease that we've got. Whether you're talking about our lack of consensus. You know, it used to be that consensus meant not just that we vote, but that 2 sides vote, and the losing side says, whatever happens when we lose on, in good faith, we're gonna go along with this rule or law until we get to vote again on it. And yeah, both sides have not done that. We've wanted to reverse what the other side did instead of working to make it better. And so that's part of the problem that we've got. I don't want to throw an English teacher word out here for you, but there's a sense of ennui, this feeling of, oh, excuse me, that's a little bit of indigestion right there. Ennui, this feeling of helplessness that not only are we sad and depressed about what to do, but we feel like there's no hope and we can't do anything about it. And whether you're talking about climate change, whether you're talking about healthcare, the worst thing that we can do is say that there's nothing to do. And when I'm arguing with people on Facebook, that's the thing I hear the most, is not climate change isn't happening, but what are we gonna do about it? And there's tons, I just mentioned there's tons of stuff we can do about it. And yeah, it sucks to have to work for a minimum wage and we should raise it, but what are we gonna do about it? So I think that overcoming this ennui and standing up, if I could quote my favorite president, Jimmy Carter, if we could get rid of this malaise that we've had for the last 30, 40, 50 years in this country, then I think we can start putting it all together.
Yes, you know, we obviously need to overturn Citizens United. I mean, the campaign finance system. The out of control executive branch, you know, it doesn't matter who's the president. We have to start getting back to where the House and the Senate make the laws of this country, and we start having more conversations with each other, where the communities make the decisions, and where we actually make reasonable decisions. But I think when you look at all of those, the real problem is the rise of extremism, of all kinds. I'm talking about political extremism and religious extremism. When you look on the other side of the aisle in this race, you have Mary Miller. Mary Miller and Chris Miller, he is my state representative. These are 5,000-year Earth people, where Jesus is riding a dinosaur. And that is something that is, that kind of extremist view of Christianity is a threat to certainly my religious faith, but is also a threat to our way of life, our way of thinking, our way of talking to one another. And it's something that is will be an issue in this campaign, in the general election. But that also brings to mind where we're at, actually, and where we're sitting right here in Flora, which, anybody that knows, this was the, where they had freedom festivals. That's what they call them, or in the Christian Patriots Defense League, which was another name for the KKK.
Yep.
And we have to fight extremism from that time period in this district, and we have to fight it on the terms of many things that people hate, and we have to do that across the district. We have to do that across America, and I say I'm ready to take that on. I've been taking it on my entire life. Thank you.
Okay, next question. What is your plan on strengthening Social Security? Go ahead.
I don't know yet that I have a policy for strengthening it, but I know that we don't want to get rid of it. I've said this before, we have a generation of people who were promised that they would have Social Security if they made investments into it. I would not support anything that doesn't fulfill that promise. I think in this country, we have a habit of making promises to people and then not fulfilling them. And so, I don't know how we improve it, but I know we can maintain it at the very least, and that we can't get rid of it. I know we talk about older people. My grandmother is retired. She's retired from the VA, but she spends a lot of money on her housing and on her Medicare, her coverage. And that's after giving 30 plus years as a nurse to the VA. And making those investments into retirement funds and Social Security. And so how do we improve on it? I don't know. And unfortunately, this seat only gets 2 years, right? 2 years to be there and try to work on those things. But I think aligning yourself and getting on those committees and finding out what's available, getting connected with the appropriations committee to see what we can actually get appropriated for those programs is a very important piece of that. And that's what I would want to do.
Social Security. I have probably 2 people a week getting on Social Security, and then it's a big eye opener for them. They're like, wow, how do you live on this? And I was like, yeah, I know. If you don't have 401k or a good 401k, good pension, or own a house, your rental, maybe just a rental property on the low end of the wage earners, you're instantly in poverty or right above poverty. Social Security is going to be here. It's part of our, it's kind of like education. I know it's not going anywhere. There's enough people that support it that it will get funded. But we need to bring that lower side of the bell curve, that bottom 20, bottom 30%, bring them up with the inflation standards, especially elderly inflation standards, because it's food and drugs basically and trying to stay alive. The high end, they don't need to be increased anymore, or you can even bring it down. We could do that by taxing high end investments on high income earners, and also, I just lost a train of thought. increase the taxes on the high income earners, and also the payroll tax, increasing that from, I think it's like 137. The high earners, they can afford a higher payroll tax on their income over their lifetime. Thank you.
So like, do y'all remember back in 2009 when it was teachers and public employees and nurses and minimum wage workers that sank the economy and ruined everything? No, I don't remember that either. So like, it like makes me mad that you're gonna take the people who didn't cause the problem and they're like, no, let's leave them out. I didn't get a bailout in 2009 when I lost my job. In fact, I was working as a telemarketer, putting anyone go from a 401k to a Roth IRA. Around that time in 2009, I probably called you up on the phone to put you in there, getting paid minimum wage. I got $1.50 for every one of those phone calls I made. So yeah, I paid into that job and as a waiter, a meat packer, a delivery driver, pumping gas. Yeah, I'm gonna be relying on Social Security for helping to pay for my retirement, and I'm 39 and my daughter's 2 years old, so that's probably gonna be help going to raise my daughter too. And on top of that, as if that wasn't enough, I'm also in part of that TRS. And I know we got some teachers in here, and I'm part of tier 2 of TRS. So I will accept your crying later on and like making that up to me. Because the government's actually said, I know that Social Security gets a bad rap as a Ponzi scheme. It's not. But tier 2 of the Illinois TRS system has actually been legally classified as a Ponzi scheme. We pay out the tier 3 people and we pay out the tier 1 people. And the tier 2 people like me are left behind waiting for JB and the state legislature and the Supreme Court to iron all this out while I'm sitting here wondering how much of my 10% of my money I'm ever gonna get back. So what can we do? We can fully fund those things. We can expect that, yeah, we expect you to fulfill the promises you made. We can work to bail out that middle class. And this is an exciting time to do that, talking about opportunity, because with infrastructure that's known to boost the economy, with spending on the environment, we can boost the economy at the same time and create new revenue streams that help to fully fund these programs. Trying to legalize marijuana at the federal level and then earmarking that money to go towards Social Security and education programs and bailing out people's health care funds is something that we can all do to help everyone out.
Yes, this is absolutely firm. We are not going to be cutting Social Security. I would never support that. In fact, what we should be doing is increasing Social Security. Absolutely. Anybody who lives on Social Security knows, especially on the low end of it, it does not pay any of your bills. It barely does. And we need to be making sure that our seniors get not only pay their bills, but able to enjoy their lives. People that enjoy their lives are healthier people. That means their Medicare bills are going to be less. That's going to decrease the cost of Medicare. It's going to increase their lives. It's going to increase their lives outside of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. When people have more money and people have worked their lives for these benefits, they've also worked their lives for Social Security disability benefits as well. And we need to be increasing those as well. People. Erica mentioned this at the last debate on Tuesday. People have been talking about this for a long time. We have not increased any of the living expenses at any amount for so long. It's like, back in the 90s, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have internet, like we do today. And these are necessities for people to be connected to their communities, to their country, to know what's happening. We have to focus on what matters for people, make them healthier, more connected people. That's what's really important. And so many of our seniors, working 2 to 3 jobs and living in assisted living communities. That is not the American dream. The American dream is where you work hard, you're able to enjoy your life, and when you retire, you're retired. And you can enjoy your life. And it's not happening in this country anymore, especially in rural America. We have to make people, seniors, veterans, and all of our people, the source of our policies. Thank you.
All right, next question. What is your feelings about increasing the minimum wage nationwide? what would your minimum wage be? Okay.
I wasn't sure if she was gonna start with me here.
Yeah, part of being a congressional candidate is being tough and dealing with the hard stuff.
I got it.
True.
This is what I do every day. I'm a lawyer. But I would increase it. And I know right now we're looking at $15 an hour. And I'll be very honest with you, especially in a rural community, I don't think that's enough, especially in an area where we don't have public transportation and people have to commute quite some distance to get to their jobs. And so I think maybe $20 an hour is a little more reasonable. And I say that because it would put people at about $40,000 a year. And while that's still not as impressive as it should be, especially for a family, it would help more. And people need to be able to pay for traveling and the maintenance on their car and gas and, you know, their housing expenses and food security and housing security. And I'm telling you that it's just not easy. So, you know, if you heard me talk before, you've heard me say that the reason I'm running is because I've lived these experiences. I have lived in poverty. I have been homeless. I know what it means. When I moved to Mattoon in 2005, I did not have any income, and my children and I would go to McDonald's and get the 2 for $3, the little burgers, and because they were small, we would cut them in half, and so everybody would get a half of a burger. No one should have to do that. That's not how people should have to live. That's not sustainable. That's not a great quality of life. I was telling someone else, when I went to law school, I commuted from Mattoon to Chicago for 3 years. That is 184 miles. I didn't have a luxury apartment in Chicago. I slept on couches and floors for 3 years, but no one should have to leave their family to get something, to do better. And so, yes, we need to increase our minimum wage, and $40,000 is at least something that people can live on, because people who are working every day, even though they're saying the unemployment is at an all-time low, but people are working at part-time jobs and they don't have enough. They're still using link cards and getting public benefits, and that's what Kevin's referring to. I did say that those numbers are not, they haven't been reconsidered and refigured or recalculated in over how many decades, right? And the cost of living has gone up, but we're not giving people what they need just to meet their basic needs. And if you don't meet people at their basic needs, you're not gonna be happy. They're not going to be taken care of. Their families are not safe. Their schools are not funded. And we need to do that. And so that would be my plan, to at least consider at least $20 an hour. Thank you.
Minimum wage. My first experience was actually being on the library board there in Salem, and we're complaining, or the employees were complaining, you know, it's not getting paid enough. And I, you know, board member, you're not really paying attention. It was like $8.50, $8.90 an hour, and I was like, how can anybody even get in a car, pay gas, insurance, go to work, and then do it all over again and go home and then pay taxes on top of that? And then we pulled the whole chart of everybody there, and I think it took me a year and a half to get that raised to only $1, and I still felt bad about it. But bringing it up to $15, I think the minimum wage needs to be based on whether you live in Chicago, whether you live in Salem. There's going to be different minimum wages there. So that would be the first part. But paying people a minimum living wage, it's an ethical thing to do. It brings more money in the community. They'll have more money and they'll spend it more in our communities. Leaving them at $8 an hour and they're paying Amazon or Walmart, it's leaving our community. When this was coming across, we had people, I hear everything at the pharmacy, you know, how's it gonna affect the bank? You know, we pay minimum wage, or independent businesses. And I was like, I already pay a living wage. You know, maybe not my high school delivery guy that comes in for a couple hours, but I was like, I already pay it. I was like, you can suck it up, but that's a small part of our community. You know, you got, well, you're telling me McDonald's can't afford to pay $15 an hour? I was like, I don't believe it. There's 40 cars in line at Salem at all hours of the day. I was like, you're telling me McDonald's can't afford $15 an hour? I was like, you're out of your mind. But everybody gets focused on, oh, it's gonna run the small businesses out of the community or bankrupt. And I was like, we're already getting bankrupt, you know? And I was like, it is happening. So that's my feeling on it. Thank you.
Yeah, Great question. How do you live and survive on minimum wage? And I'll tell you, as someone who waited tables for 15 years and who's also been without a home and lived out of his car, you don't. I carried around a medical condition, and we're all eating here, so I'm not trying to gross you out, but I carried around a medical condition while I waited tables and couldn't get insurance. It almost killed me, and carried that around for 9 years until finally, thank God, Obama and Obamacare happened, and I was able to get a surgery. A minor surgery could have been fixed with antibiotics a decade ago, and instead I had to have surgery that just about killed me. And got to do that, by the way, by going back to school. In case you guys are thinking I'm some kind of good-hearted social justice warrior, I actually went back to school after I dropped out, not because I wanted to make something of myself. It was a scam so I could get student loan money so I could get insurance. That's why I went back to school, so I could get insurance so I wouldn't have to die from a pimple on my butt. And then on top of that, it just makes me mad. On top of that, now I gotta sit up here and tell you guys about my deadly butt pimple because I couldn't make more than, by the way, waiting tables, $1.75 an hour, you get half the minimum wage and you live on tips. Do I look like a dude that gets a lot of tips? No, nobody tips me 20%. So, yeah, I think Erica's absolutely right. If you look at if you want to keep up with inflation, I think the minimum wage would be about $12.68 an hour, making $40,000 a year. That's not what I was making waiting tables on the graveyard shift at IHOP from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. having drunk people yell at me. Well, I got a bleeding cyst on my butt running around trying to act like I'm happy to be serving them chili fries. So we got to raise that minimum wage. And we can't keep on running this system where, again, going back to this problem of just greed and not caring about other people. I happen to believe that if you give people a chance, even those deplorables we talk about, if you give people a chance to do the right thing, they will. They will do the right thing if we just message them in the right way. So that's all I got. Raise that minimum wage.
Yes, increasing the minimum wage nationwide only makes sense. Raising it to the same rate as Illinois as our representative only makes sense to level the playing field across the country. Because, let me tell you, we have the best state parks, we have the best people living here in the 15th district, and it'll make people want to stay here, want to work here. It sounds like a wonderful idea. And we do have public transportation in almost every one of our communities, and it's a collaboration between federal, state, and community funds. It's actually in almost every single community I've ever lived in and I've walked in. You just have to know how to access it. We need to increase the funds for outreach so that people know. The zip line in Coles County, it's $1 to get anywhere in Coles County. I've used that many times myself because I didn't drive for a number of years. It's just a lot cheaper. We also need to focus on microloans. Microloans across the entire world have been very good at getting people out of poverty, giving people an opportunity to make their own businesses. And we need to be thinking about a new economy for the 15th district and rural economies in general. Give people the opportunity to make their own business, sell their own goods, not just in their own communities, but across the world. And we can only do that if we do the broadband access at the same time. And also, we need to focus on these the businesses that have very low overhead, right? Where the business owner or the person running the business doesn't make that much more than the employees. We need to make it so that business owner doesn't have to close when we increase the minimum wage, right? So in those places, we will insert benefits and tax breaks and tax credits to make sure that the business owner is whole, as well as the employee. When we take care of both the worker and the small business owner, we all benefit. And that's what you can know that I will demand in Congress. And I believe you'll get Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle coming together on that proposal. Thank you.
Okay, next question is, what is your position on health care? Erica?
So, it's interesting because I know everyone wants me to say, I'm gonna go in there and demand Medicare for all. So, my position on healthcare, yes, I am a supporter of the idea of Medicare for all. The reason I tell people that I wanna make sure that it's funded is because I also know that we have federal mandates on issues, but we don't get federal funding. And so, I'm not gonna tell people that they have to have this insurance if we don't have the funding and if the Appropriations Committee doesn't make that commitment. So that's where I lie on that. I want it to be as comprehensive as possible. I want it to cover things that are not necessarily highlighted in the act as it was presented by Senator Sanders. And so that's where I would stand on it. But as it relates to the district specifically, what I have proposed and what I think is a great idea is that we invest in mobile units, because we're not gonna get hospitals in every county. And mobile units cost between $250,000 to maybe $300,000 per unit. There's a small overhead because we're not employing a bunch of people, and it can travel. Because we really don't have public transportation, and I say that because I used to live in the suburbs of Chicago, and public transportation comes along every 5 to 7 minutes. The zip line and the things that we have in Coles County only operates between about 9 and 5 p.m., meaning that people have to find ways to get to the stops, and they, only can have it during certain hours. And for people who work at factories overnight, and those zip lines don't go out to the factories. So we need to be able to make sure that people have access to the healthcare, and so mobile units will do that. We have mobile mammogram units in Coles County. My sorority has a mobile mammogram unit, so that means it's something that's possible. We have mobile dental units. We can also invest into mobile mental health units and units for veterans and mental health services, and so that would be my proposal, is that we invest into those, especially in a rural district where people don't have access and transportation to get to healthcare. Thank you.
Do I get extra time on this one?
Not for me,
Like
Greg.
30 minutes?
Cram it in.
Healthcare, first of all, living in the United States, the richest country in the world, it should be a right. Just like education is up there. We have no problem paying for education for the most part. But it should be a God-given right, especially in this country. What really grinds me is looking at the prices of our drugs. I know that's a buzzword, but that little bottle of insulin, when I first graduated, starry-eyed in late 90s, cost $8 or $10. Now that same vial looks exactly the same, is like $300. I was like, you're telling me they couldn't make it cheaper? It kept getting more expensive. I was like, it boggles my mind, and it looks exactly the same. So we need to negotiate drug pricing, work with the companies, especially the overseas stuff. That's a whole nother issue and a national security issue. So I want to track back to something for the younger group. The Affordable Care Act is one of the best pieces of legislation that I've ever seen. I don't think I've had one person declare bankruptcy on me. Once that came out, you get sick, and all of a sudden you're losing your house, worried about getting divorced, and declaring bankruptcy. What we need to do is build on the Affordable Care Act with 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and even 10-year plan. I am really serious there. Make that the backbone of our next major legislation with healthcare. Fix what everybody doesn't like and build on what works and move forward there. Thank you.
So I already told you guys one medical horror story, so maybe really quick I'll tell you another one. So I was a military brat, so I was used to just going to the hospital whenever you're sick and just going to the emergency room and getting some Motrin, and then you go back home. And so I just thought, oh, that's what you do, it's free. So when I was 18, 19, I was working at a meat packing plant pulling spinal cords out of cows, and I sliced my finger so bad, jammed a knife down in the thumb, and I went to the emergency room, and I was like, no problem, they'll just stitch me up. And then my mom got a phone. My mom called me up 2 days later and was like, did you go to the emergency room for something? And I said, yeah, why? She said, they just sent us a bill for $5,000. And I was like, oh, I just thought it was free to go get fixed when you almost died of infections. And I'm not sure to this day, 25 years later, even though I've got a college degree now, why that's not the case. And when you look at the rest of the world, they don't have people that go bankrupt and almost die because they get sick. And I'm not sure why this country, which is supposed to be the richest and the greatest in the world, and I think it's the greatest, doesn't have that too. And so that's something that we need to give to people. Now, I've been on the record as supporting Medicare for all. I think if you look at the studies and look at the numbers, it's not only the most cost effective, but it's also the most humane solution. Going back to my value earlier of saying that it turns out doing the right thing is also the right thing to do. So that's great, but I realize that, yeah, we are in a district that might go away in 2 years, and obviously, they're not coming to me to write amendments or legislation, even though I happen to be a very good writer, so I'm open to that. But they're not coming to me for that, so obviously I've got to vote pragmatically. I think like the historian Frederick Jackson Turner said, Americans aren't idealists, we're pragmatists. We don't have to have England or Canada's healthcare system. We can steal what they do and do it. That's what America does best. We steal other people's ideas and we do it better. We took the Greeks' democracy and we did it better. We didn't invent the car, but we figured out how to make them better than anybody else. So why can't we do that with healthcare too? Why can't we steal someone else's healthcare plan and then make it into the best in the world? I think that's something that's easily capable. Thanks.
Yeah, healthcare is the most complicated issue to get right. If you don't get it right, people die. I know this personally because the comprehensive healthcare system that I helped implement in Indiana. Once I left, Governor Pence took over, and people literally died. People I loved actually died because of the decisions that politicians made, and they didn't know better. Come to find out, I do like what Craig has said here, which is, when you have a program that works, you expand it, just like the public transportation that is available in so many of our rural communities. Erica's right, it doesn't, there's not enough of it, it's not enough time, but you don't just say that doesn't work. What you do is you expand it, you make it work, and you know what, that's more jobs for more people too. With healthcare in particular, I think what's happened in our party as as one faction thinks that they know better than everybody else, but they're good-hearted in their approach, right? They want to say, if we just say we're going to cover everybody, it'll be better. If you know how the government systems work, they don't really work very well because they're using antiquated technology and information systems. Anybody who's ever dealt with Social Security knows what I'm talking about. It's stuff like on an Apple IIe, it looks like. If you know what an Apple IIe is,
Yeah.
You've been around a long time and remember most of your life. What we need to do is upgrade those systems first and make sure that Medicare, Social Security work for the people that have them and that will have them in the next 20 years. And then we need to slowly expand those systems and make sure that everybody that comes into the Medicare system, the public option, that it works amazingly well, and that those people are taken care of very well with preventative medication, and make sure that we are a healthier society. Healthcare is about the community, it's about our children first, it's about our elderly, our veterans, and then we expand out from there. Thank you.
Okay, last question of the evening. What would you do, or how would you deal with property taxes? A lot of people are concerned about property taxes, and it's something that we need to talk about. Erica.
Okay, so I can tell you what I know. I know that I've talked to people, especially some of our local people in Coast County, and they've said that because of property taxes, that is increasing the exodus from our district and from our state. That people are leaving and they're staying in other states because they stay there about 51% of the time, because that helps them not have to deal with the taxes here. And so I think we need to make sure that our taxes are reasonable. We won't get rid of taxes, of course, we know that. But I know in some areas our taxes are not necessarily more than other states, but it's not working for people. And primarily in areas where they don't have a lot of income. And so we have to make sure that it's proportionate. And how do we do that? How do we divide that out? Because that is one thing that I agree with Craig on, is that in some areas where the income is less and the cost of living is less, then we should make that much lower than it would be in some larger areas. And so we have a few districts or a few counties in our district that are really large, like Vermilion and Champaign County. And so maybe the taxes there might be a little more than they would be in Clinton and some of the other smaller counties, but we have to find a way to make it so it works for people and it's reasonable and it's proportionate and they can afford it, and they're not, it's not taking away from their cost of, or their quality of life. And so that's what I would do. I know the governor wants to do a new tax system, and so I would be interested in looking into that and see if that's something that we could support, because I don't know if you all know this, but our governor's doing a pretty good job because he is signing a lot of things into legislation that has helped, even with insulin, he has capped that, right, with broadband, and so, with medical marijuana, recreational marijuana. So there are a lot of things that are really, really good, and I would really want to work with our local and state legislators and see what we can do to make that affordable and reasonable so that we don't lose more residents.
First of all, I know the property taxes are pretty much a local issue or a state issue, and we're going national here on these campaigns, but working elected, being a member of the city council, I hear it just about on a daily basis. I was like, my God, our taxes are so high, but we look at the budget. I mean, we get a budget every year. It's that thick, and there's nowhere, if you cut out 10% of property taxes, it's gone. That's employees, police, sewer, I mean, it's gone. I was like, we literally use every penny that comes in, and people don't realize that, but I don't know if it's like a mental thing, and it's getting, like in the news and everything with Illinois in particular, and I don't really see that we're that much off from our neighboring states. It's just like a mentality that is out there that maybe the other side is pushing. But you look at what you pay, you gotta have your schools. They use every penny, and at least in Salem, they're wanting to increase the sales tax because they don't have enough money there. Then you go to our roads, we can only pave so many roads a year. And that's what I tell people. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna move to Tennessee anyhow. I was like, that's not the answer to these questions. I was like, you lived here, you grew up here, you need to be part of the community. So I gripe about my property taxes too. I mean, every 3 months I'm looking at my wife's griping out. But being on city council is an eye opener, being a local government. And that money, we don't waste that money. It goes to good use, and we use every single penny of it, and it's a very thoughtful process. Thank you.
So big surprise, I've actually never been a homeowner. I'm 39 years old. My daughter was born 2 years ago, and we thought, man, let's try to maybe actually buy a house. It's supposed to be cheaper than renting. But I got approved for a $189,000 house. That's more than I've ever had in my life. And we went and looked around. Turned out you don't get it much with $189,000 these days anymore. At least not in Madison County in the Metro East. And it turned out that on top of that, with the property tax in Madison County, that we'd be paying more. It wouldn't be cheaper. The only reason, again, like just trying to scam out student loans, the only reason we were trying to get a house in the first place is we paid less rent. It turns out we paying even more, and then of course we're on the hook for property tax as well, and try getting a home loan with no down payment either these days. So yeah, I'm not the type of dude that's got a down payment ready to go on a house like that. So when you talk about adding property tax into the mix, that just seems like an insurmountable hurdle for so many people, and we can't keep having this system where every new down the road kind of bumpkin country township offers lower tax rates for their houses for 21 years, so you can go out and buy and make yourself a mini mansion, and then they go and jack up the property tax for you once the schools actually turn decent. And of course, on that note, obviously, property tax is an inadequate way to pay for schools. Where I work at in East St. Louis, property tax is not paying the bills over there, or at least it should be, but it's not coming from the right sources. So what we need to do is rethink our entire tax plan. While Donald Trump and the Republicans were trying to fit everything that you could do onto a postage stamp, they actually should have thought about the people who actually need to buy stamps in this world still and get stuff done. Because my tax plan now fits on a postage stamp and can be done at the library for me, but it's not making me any more money, and that's not getting me a house. And so I think what we're finding out more and more is that things like income tax and property tax are irrelevant and are drops in the bucket when it comes to fixing some of the problems that we have in our local communities. What we need are new solutions and new sources of revenue, new ways to go about some of that. And when we talk about a state issue, one thing we could do, talking about environment real quick on that time, an excise tax on coal would help solve a lot of those problems. Thanks.
In Illinois, the property tax issue is about the flat income tax, and if anybody doesn't realize, the fair income tax, graduated income tax is going to be on the ballot in November. It's the most important issue on the Illinois ballot, probably even more important than the president. You know, we have had this structural problem in Illinois since 1971, and ever since we've been on an unsustainable path in Illinois. That is by far the most important thing, and that's why Illinois Republicans always talk about property taxes. That, you know, property taxes in Illinois have had to pick up the difference from the state because state government has not been funded properly ever since the flat income tax. And federally, we all have a role to play. And that's because the Trump tax cuts cut the property tax credit. And that hit states like Illinois particularly hard because our property taxes are so high. And it is offensive to any of the Republicans in Congress voted for those Trump tax cuts because of that very issue. So, you know, it's disrespectful to anybody in this room, anybody that is a property owner, and anybody that pays rent. Anybody who pays rent is paying property taxes as well. And that's the good chunk of people that are working poor. That is a good chunk of people that are, anybody who's living anywhere that's not homeless is paying property taxes. Anybody that is homeless is a victim of this system as well. And we have a ton of that in this district. So we all have a role to play, and if you don't understand what in the world our role is as a representative, if we are a Democrat, we win this district, which we can this time, we darn well need to have that voice heard. A Democratic voice from the rural district, the 15th is the voice that needs to be heard the most in all of Congress. And I will make sure that it is heard, because these people have not had a voice in Congress for 25 years, and it's about darn time. Thank you.